normality in our society is that people are disconnected from who they are. The consumer culture and the culture of people influencing each other, it's all part of a culture of disconnection. The reason so many people are suffering physical and mental illness, it all comes from this disconnection from our nature. These so-called mentally ill behaviors, they all serve a function, dealing with the trauma that has not been addressed. Are we aware? Are we conscious? Are we making deliberate choices? Or are we driven by unconscious pain? Which kind of pain would you rather be? The pain of self-suppression or the pain of losing some attachments?
Do you see a divine design within our wounding?
There's something about our nature. There's a kind of intelligence in it that wants us to be authentic to ourselves. People need freedom. Freedom politically, freedom economically, freedom socially, freedom from their unconscious emotions so they can be themselves. And that's, I think, the essential endeavor of all the great work that's been done in the world is the desire for freedom.
The body says no of what's happening on a global scale, but then also reclaiming the personal responsibility to see where am I still asleep in my own life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And bringing that back home within ourselves, because that's ultimately the only thing we have control over. So is there anything you want to speak to into inviting people just to try, before trying to wake up the world and liberate the world, we got to start where our feet are?
Well, sure. And I was speaking just a few days ago with this wonderful Buddhist meditation teacher, Tara Brach, and she talks about the trance that we're all in. So, you know, the trance is when we're not aware that we're there, that we're not aware of ourselves. You know, we're just sort of automatically carrying on with something. And, you know, there I am at my hotel room last night, you know, toggling from one YouTube video to another, and all of a sudden, I'm in a trance. What am I doing? I'm not doing anything useful. I'm not even doing anything that entertaining. I'm just an automatic pilot. So you're totally right, and we all find ourselves in this trance much of the time, lacking aware of our bodies and our minds and what our life intentions are. I mean, I tell you, I hate the idea of being on my deathbed and looking at it. Oh my God, what did I do with all that time? You know, even now, you know?
Yeah.
So, so that waking up and that taking responsibility is a daily task. Again, this culture tends to lull us. It's designed to lull us to sleep all the time. With Thomas Merton, who's a Catholic monk, also, and a mystic, and he also lived in mid-20th century, and in his autobiography called The Seven-Story Mountain, he talks about that this whole society is designed to lull us to sleep with our products and our Hollywood films and everything else to keep us in a state of passivity.
Yeah, control.
Yeah. So and of course, wittingly or unwittingly, we get to be willing participants in this mass hypnosis.
Yeah, and it doesn't make it easier that, for example, with social media, the algorithms are literally meant to keep us as engaged with the least amount of effort, that we can just sit there and they'll even do the scrolling for us now. We just have to stare at the screen and keep getting dopamine.
Yeah, well, and those devices are designed with addictive blandishments in mind. They're designed to keep. There's a company called Dopamine Lab, which helps design programs for cell phones. For God, dopamine is a chemical that we need for life, but when we don't generate it through meaningful activity, we get hooked into false activities that spike our dopamine for us. And it's a very deliberate attempt. It's not, they call it neuromarketing. They're actually marketing stuff to get our nervous system hooked, you know, and we participate in it.
Yeah, I want to touch on how oftentimes this society around us will capitalize, right? Before our minds make the environment makes us, right?
Yeah.
And who we are as individuals when we come into the world, you know, we are these, some might say we're connected to our true nature in this blank state. But I actually want to touch on and ask you about intergenerational trauma, because of course, you know, we have the traumas that we've occurred in this lifetime, but also as a species, as a culture, as a people, African Americans, Middle Easterns, we all have our own individuation of trauma that is within our bloodline. And how do you see that stored in the unconscious? Because let's say I'm in my 20s and 30s and I have I have some sort of repression of emotion or something that I can't necessarily point to an event that happened in my life, and maybe it didn't happen in this life. But how do you see it? Is everything just coming from this life, or is it essentially the genes and how they impress upon us?
Well, so some people believe in past lives even. My mind has never been able to go there. I usually find it sufficient to look at a person's life in this temporal state and find enough reasons for why they are the way they are. That doesn't mean that past generations don't come into it. But what I am saying is that the effect of past generations is passed on to us in this lifetime.
Yeah.
So in Canada, there's a terrible history of our native people being horribly abused by the state. Their children were abducted for 100 years and sent to terrible residential schools where they were sexually, emotionally, and physically abused, and many of them died at the hands of the church and the state. It so happens that our Indigenous Canadians also make up a large percentage of our prison population. They have much higher rates of addiction, suicide, mental health issues, physical illnesses that they never used to have before colonization. And unfortunately, and whereas they used to parent in a much healthier way than so-called advanced societies parent, they really knew how to parent. Hold kids, support them, give them an environment that reared them to be confident, self-assured, socially connected human beings. They knew how to do it. They were much closer to our nature. That's been largely extirpated. As a result, now they abuse their kids. So each generation then passes on its trauma to the next. So in a lot of Native communities, it's almost impossible to find young girls by the time they're teenagers who have not been sexually abused. Now that's the impact of the past, but it's being exerted in this particular lifetime. Then you have what's called epigenetic transmission, which means that the way the genes function, if one generation is traumatized, that alters not the gene structure, but the genetic functioning. And that genetic functioning can be passed on to future generations. That's a new science. I don't think we fully know yet how strong those epigenetic effects are. It's an emerging field. It's some very interesting research. But in general, and certainly it's already true that when a mother carries an infant, the stresses and traumas that she is burdened with can affect the developing brain and personality of the child already in the womb already. So yes, the experience, and as a Jew, I can tell you that the traumas of previous generations certainly have an impact on, as a part Palestinian, you know the same thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's been an unfortunate set of circumstances that have, in my view, imposed the trauma of one people onto another people.
We're here today.
Yeah.
In loving embrace.
Yeah. So the past trauma does happen, and Eckhart Tolle, the spiritual teacher, talks about the pain body, which is really our accumulated traumas that affect us. And he talks about the pain body can exist on a social and historical level as well.
Yeah.
So women, because of the persecution of women, the witch hunts, the oppression of women, the rape, and so on, women carry that pain body, and certain peoples carry a heavier pain body than other peoples. So yeah, it's all multi-generational, it's all historical, and I think that the effects are always exerted in this particular lifetime.
Yeah.